A trucker pulled into a rest stop for coffee. An 11-year-old boy walked up, held out a crumpled $20 bill, and asked for a ride across state lines. When the boy showed him a photo and whispered, "Everyone says she's dead, but I know where my sister is," the trucker realized this wasn't just a runaway kid, this was a rescue mission neither of them would survive unchanged. The coffee tasted like burnt rubber, but Hank Dalton drank it anyway. 3 a.m. at a nowhere rest stop meant you took what you could get. He'd been driving for 11 hours straight, hauling refrigerated goods from Portland to Kansas City, and his body was screaming for sleep. The fluorescent lights above the vending machines buzzed and flickered. Hank stood there, rolling his stiff shoulders, when he heard the footsteps. Small. Hesitant. Wrong. He turned and saw the kid. Maybe 11 years old, skinny as a rail, wearing a jacket 2 sizes too big. The boy's sneakers were held together with duct tape, and he carried a backpack that looked like it had been dragged through a war zone. But it was his eyes that made Hank pause, they held the kind of fear that shouldn't exist in someone so young. The kid walked straight up to him, and without a word, thrust out his hand. In it was a crumpled $20 bill. "I need you to drive me," the boy said. His voice shook, but his jaw was set with determination. Hank stared at the money, then at the kid. "Where are your parents?" "Don't have any." "Guardian? Foster family?" The boy's grip on the 20 tightened. "I ran away. I need to get to Millbrook. It's 200 miles from here, across the state line." Hank's first instinct was to walk away. He'd seen runaway kids before, hell, he'd been one himself at 14. But getting involved meant trouble, and trouble was something Hank had spent the last 20 years avoiding. "Listen, kid. My name's Tyler." "Tyler, then. I'm not a taxi service. And I'm definitely not driving a runaway across state lines. That's kidnapping. I'm not running away," Tyler's voice cracked. "I'm running toward something." Before Hank could respond, Tyler pulled a photograph from his jacket pocket. The edges were worn soft from handling, and the image was creased down the middle. It showed a teenage girl, maybe 16 or 17, with long dark hair and a cautious smile. She was sitting on a porch swing, looking at the camera like she wasn't sure she wanted to be photographed. "That's Lena," Tyler whispered. "She's my sister." Hank glanced at the photo, then back at the boy. "Okay. So call her. I'm sure she'd come get you. Everyone says she's dead." The words hung in the air between them like smoke. Hank felt something cold settle in his chest. "Kid, if your sister passed away, I'm sorry, but..." "She's not dead." Tyler's hands were shaking now, making the photograph tremble. "They all think she is. The police. My foster parents. Everyone. She disappeared 8 months ago with her boyfriend, Riker. They found his car abandoned near a river. They found blood. They think he killed her and dumped her body somewhere." "Jesus," Hank muttered. "But I know she's alive." Tyler looked up at him with absolute certainty. 3 days ago, I heard Mr. Patterson, that's my foster dad, talking on the phone. He was talking to his brother who works construction in Millbrook. His brother said he saw a girl who looked exactly like Lena. She was with a guy matching Riker's description. They were at some auto shop. Hank wanted to tell the kid he was wrong. That grief did strange things to people, made them see what they wanted to see. But something in Tyler's expression stopped him. "Mr. Patterson called the police," Tyler continued, speaking faster now. "But they said it was probably just someone who looked like her. They said the case was closed. They said I needed to accept that Lena was gone and stop making things harder on myself. So you took $20 and ran." Tyler nodded. "It's all I had saved up. I know it's not enough to pay you for gas, but," he swallowed hard. "Please. You're the 5th trucker I've asked. Everyone else said no." If I don't go now, if I wait any longer, she might disappear again. Riker might move her somewhere I'll never find her. Hank looked at this scrawny kid with duct-taped shoes and a $20 bill, and he saw something he recognized. Desperation. The kind that made you do stupid, dangerous things because the alternative was giving up completely. He thought about his own sister, Sarah. About how she disappeared into the foster system when he was 16, and how he'd never found her again. About how that failure had carved out a piece of his soul that never quite grew back. "You really think she's alive?" Hank asked quietly. "I know she is," Tyler's voice didn't waver. "I can feel it. We're twins. And I know that sounds crazy, but I would know if she was dead. I would feel it. Twins." That explained the fierce certainty, the willingness to risk everything. Hank looked at the parking lot. His truck sat there like a patient animal, engine still warm. He had a delivery schedule. He had a boss who didn't tolerate delays. He had a life specifically designed to avoid complications. But he also had a choice. He took the $20 bill from Tyler's hand, then immediately gave it back. "Keep your money," Hank said. "But if we're doing this, we're doing it smart. No cops until we know what we're dealing with. And if this turns out to be nothing, if she really is gone, you have to promise me you'll accept it. Deal?" Tyler's face transformed. Hope, raw and powerful, flooded his features. "Deal." Hank grabbed his coffee cup and headed toward his truck, Tyler following so close he was practically stepping on Hank's heels. "One more thing," Hank said as he unlocked the cab. "If anyone asks, you're my nephew. Got it?" "Got it." As Tyler climbed into the passenger seat, Hank noticed something that made his blood run cold. There was a car parked at the far edge of the lot, windows dark, engine off. And in the driver's seat, barely visible in the shadows, sat a man. Watching them. Hank's hand froze on the door handle. Tyler noticed his expression and turned to look. "What's wrong?" the boy asked. Hank forced himself to smile. "Nothing. Just tired. Let's get moving." But as he started the engine and pulled out of the rest stop, Hank kept checking his mirrors. The dark car didn't follow. Not yet. The highway stretched ahead like a black ribbon, empty except for the occasional pair of headlights passing in the opposite direction. Tyler sat rigid in the passenger seat, both hands gripping his backpack like it might fly away. Hank let the silence stretch for the first 20 miles. He'd learned long ago that people talked when they were ready, not when you pushed them. But finally, curiosity got the better of him. "Tell me about Lena," he said. Tyler's shoulders relaxed slightly. "She raised me. I mean, we had foster parents, but they changed every couple years. Lena was the only constant. She made sure I ate. She helped with homework. His voice caught. She was supposed to go to college. Got a scholarship and everything. Then she met Riker. What's his story?" "He's 23. Worked, at a garage." Lena thought he was romantic at first. He had a motorcycle and told her she was special. Tyler's hands clenched tighter. But then he started getting mean. Jealous. He didn't want her going to college. Said she was trying to leave him. Hank's jaw tightened. He'd seen this story before, too many times. "She tried to break up with him," Tyler continued. "That was last February. The next day, she had a black eye. She said she fell, but I knew. I begged her to report him, but she was scared. Then one night in March, she packed a bag and left a note saying she was sorry, that she had to handle something, and she'd come back for me. And she never did." Tyler shook his head. 2 days later, the police found Riker's car near Blackwater River. The doors were open. There was blood on the steering wheel and passenger seat. They found Lena's phone smashed on the ground nearby. But no bodies. No bodies, Tyler confirmed. They searched for 3 weeks. Divers went into the river. Nothing. The detective said Riker probably killed Lena, panicked, and ran. They issued a warrant for him, but he disappeared. Hank merged into the right lane, processing this. And now someone saw them in Millbrook. Mr. Patterson's brother, Danny, was doing electrical work at this auto repair shop. He said he saw a girl who looked exactly like Lena. Dark hair, same height, even had a scar on her left eyebrow like Lena does from when we were kids. She was carrying parts from the back room, and there was a guy watching her constantly. Danny said the guy matched Riker's description: tall, blonde, tattoo of a snake on his neck. Why didn't this Danny call the cops himself? Tyler looked down at his lap. He did. They told him it was probably just a coincidence. Said lots of people have dark hair and eyebrow scars. They said without concrete proof, they couldn't investigate every possible sighting. The case was closed. So you decided to investigate yourself. What else was I supposed to do? Tyler's voice rose with frustration. Just forget about her? She's my sister. My twin. She would never give up on me. Hank couldn't argue with that logic, flawed as it was. They drove in silence for another few miles. Then Tyler unzipped his backpack and pulled out a battered spiral notebook. I found this hidden under Lena's mattress after she disappeared, he said, opening it carefully. The police looked through it once, but they said it was just regular teenage stuff. Doodles and diary entries. Hank glanced over. The pages were filled with sketches, flowers, eyes, broken hearts. Song lyrics. Random thoughts written in looping handwriting. Here, Tyler said, pointing to a page near the back. Look at this. Circled in red ink was a phone number. Next to it, Lena had written, Jade, if anything happens. Who's Jade? She worked at the diner where Lena waitressed on weekends. They were close. After Lena disappeared, I tried calling this number, but I was too scared. What if Jade thought I was crazy? What if she told my foster parents I was stirring up trouble? Hank looked at the number, then at the dashboard clock. 4:30 in the morning. Too early to call now, he said. But when the sun comes up, we're calling her. If anyone knows what Lena was planning, it might be her friend. Tyler closed the notebook, relief evident on his face. Thank you. For believing me. For not just dropping me at the nearest police station. Hank didn't respond immediately. The truth was, he wasn't sure he believed the kid. Grief and hope were powerful cocktails that could make people see things that weren't there. But he also knew what it felt like to have that hope, to need it so badly that living without it seemed impossible. Get some rest, Hank said finally. We've got a long drive ahead. Tyler nodded and leaned against the window, his backpack clutched to his chest like a shield. As the boy's breathing evened out into sleep, Hank checked his mirrors again. 3 cars back, barely visible in the pre-dawn darkness, a pair of headlights maintained a steady distance. The same distance they'd kept for the last 40 miles. Hank's hands tightened on the steering wheel. They were being followed. The sun was crawling up the horizon when Hank spotted the gas station. He'd been watching those headlights for over an hour now, and his gut told him something was wrong. The car never got closer, never fell back. Just maintained that perfect distance like a predator shadowing prey. Tyler, Hank said quietly. Wake up. The boy stirred, blinking against the morning light. Are we there? No. But we need gas. Hank kept his voice calm, controlled. When we stop, I want you to stay in the truck. Lock the doors. Don't open them for anyone but me. Understand? Tyler sat up straighter, instantly alert. What's wrong? Maybe nothing. Maybe I'm paranoid. But there's a car that's been following us since we left the rest stop. Tyler twisted in his seat, looking back. Which one? Gray sedan. 3 cars back. Hank took the exit, watching his mirrors. Could be coincidence. Could be someone traveling the same route. But the gray sedan took the exit too. Hank pulled into the gas station, deliberately choosing the pump farthest from the building. Tyler's face had gone pale. What if it's them? The boy whispered. What if Riker knows I'm looking for Lena? We don't know anything yet, Hank said, though his mind was racing through possibilities. If someone really was tracking them, it meant Tyler's lead was solid. It meant Lena might actually be alive, and someone wanted to keep her hidden. The gray sedan pulled into the gas station but didn't stop at a pump. Instead, it parked near the convenience store entrance. The driver stayed inside, windows tinted too dark to see through clearly. Hank grabbed his wallet. Remember. Doors locked. I'll be quick. He climbed down from the cab, casually stretching like a man with nothing to worry about. As he swiped his card at the pump, he studied the sedan in his peripheral vision. The driver's window lowered slightly, and Hank caught a glimpse of the man inside. 30s, maybe early 40s. Shaved head. A tattoo creeping up his neck. Hank couldn't make out the design from this distance, but the style was distinctive. Prison ink, probably. The man was staring directly at Hank's truck. At Tyler. Hank's pulse quickened, but he forced himself to move slowly, methodically. He filled the tank, replaced the nozzle, and walked toward the convenience store. The man's gaze followed him. Inside, Hank grabbed 2 coffees and a handful of protein bars. The teenage clerk behind the counter looked half asleep, completely oblivious to any tension. Bathroom key? Hank asked. The clerk slid a key attached to a large wooden block across the counter without looking up from his phone. Hank paid, took the key, and walked back outside, but instead of heading to the bathroom, he circled around the back of the building. From there, he could see the gas pumps and the sedan without being observed. The driver had gotten out of the car. He was moving toward Hank's truck. Tyler must have seen him too because Hank could see the boy shrinking down in his seat, trying to make himself invisible. The man walked past the truck slowly, deliberately, looking inside. He pulled out a phone and made a call, his lips moving in conversation Hank couldn't hear. Then he nodded, ended the call, and returned to his sedan. Hank waited another minute before walking back to his truck, taking a deliberately indirect route. When he climbed into the cab, Tyler was trembling. He looked right at me, the boy said. He knew who I was. I could see it in his face. Hank handed Tyler a coffee and a protein bar. Eat. We're not stopping again for a while. But how did they find me? How did they know I'd be here? That was the question gnawing at Hank too. You said you ran away from your foster home 3 days ago? Last night. I waited until everyone was asleep, then climbed out my window. Did you tell anyone what you were planning? Anyone at all? Tyler shook his head vehemently. No. I didn't tell anyone about Danny seeing Lena either. I just heard Mr. Patterson on the phone, and I knew I had to go. Hank started the engine, his mind working through scenarios. If Tyler hadn't told anyone, then either the foster father had mentioned Tyler's interest to the wrong person, or someone had been watching the boy, waiting for him to make a move. Either way, it meant one thing: Tyler's suspicions were right. Lena was alive, and whoever had her was willing to go to serious lengths to keep her hidden. I'm going to test something, Hank said. Instead of getting back on the highway, he took a side road that looped around the gas station and merged back onto the main route from a different angle. The gray sedan followed, no longer bothering to maintain distance. They're not even hiding anymore, Tyler breathed. Hank's jaw set. No. They're not. He pressed harder on the accelerator. The truck surged forward, eating up road. Hold on, kid. This just got real. In the mirror, the sedan accelerated too, closing the gap between them. And now Hank could see there was a second car, a black SUV that had appeared from nowhere. They weren't just being followed. They were being hunted. Hank took 3 random exits in a row, backtracking twice, and finally lost the sedan and SUV somewhere near the Indiana border. By the time he pulled into a rundown motel off Route 34, his hands ached from gripping the steering wheel and Tyler looked like he might be sick. "We need to stop," Hank said, more to himself than to Tyler. "We need to think." The Starlight Motel looked like it hadn't seen better days since 1975. Peeling paint, a flickering neon sign, and exactly the kind of place where nobody asked questions. Hank paid cash for a room on the ground floor, parking his truck where he could watch it from the window. Inside, the room smelled like cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Tyler collapsed onto one of the twin beds while Hank checked the locks, pulled the curtains, and positioned a chair to watch the door. "We can't keep running," Tyler said quietly. His earlier fear had transformed into something harder. Determination. "If they know I'm looking for Lena, that means she's really there. We were right." Hank couldn't argue with that logic. "But now they're actively hunting us. Those weren't random guys, Tyler. That was organized. Professional. So what do we do?" Hank thought about calling the police. But what would he tell them? That he'd driven a runaway kid across state lines based on a rumor? That they were being followed by people who might or might not be connected to a closed missing persons case? Without proof, he'd end up arrested and Tyler would be sent back to foster care with no one believing him. "The notebook," Hank said suddenly. "That phone number. Jade." Tyler sat up, pulling the battered spiral from his backpack. His hands shook slightly as he opened it to the page with the circled number. It was 7:30 in the morning now. Reasonable enough to call. Hank pulled out his phone and dialed, putting it on speaker. The phone rang 4 times before a woman's voice answered, thick with sleep. "Hello? Is this Jade?" Hank asked. A pause. "Who's asking?" "My name's Hank. I'm a friend of the family. I'm calling about Lena Morrison." The silence that followed was so long Hank thought she'd hung up. Then, "Lena's dead." "Are you sure about that?" Hank asked carefully. "The police said." "I know what the police said. But I'm sitting here with her brother Tyler, and he has reason to believe she might still be alive." Another pause. Then a sharp intake of breath. "Tyler? Is he okay? Where is he?" Tyler leaned toward the phone. "I'm here, Jade. I'm fine. Please, if you know anything about where Lena is, you have to tell me." "Tyler, honey, I don't know anything. I swear. After Lena disappeared, the cops questioned me for hours. I told them everything I knew about Riker, about how scared she was. But I didn't know where she'd gone." Hank heard something in her voice, not quite a lie, but not the whole truth either. "Jade, someone saw a girl matching Lena's description in Millbrook. At an auto shop. We're trying to find her, but we've got people following us. Dangerous people. If there's anything at all, you remember, now's the time." The silence stretched again. Hank could hear Jade breathing, could almost feel her internal struggle. "There was something," she finally said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "But I didn't tell the police because I thought it would just make things worse for Lena if she ever came back." "What was it?" Tyler asked desperately. "About a week before Lena disappeared, she came to my apartment late at night. She was terrified. Said Riker had been talking about moving her somewhere remote, somewhere he could keep her safe from other guys. She said he had family with connections, people who could make someone disappear if they wanted to." Hank felt ice in his veins. "What kind of connections?" His cousin ran some kind of business. I don't know exactly what, Lena was vague about it. But she said Riker told her his cousin owed him a favor. A big one. She was scared Riker was going to ask his cousin to help him. I don't know, hide her away or something. Did she mention a name? Hank pressed. A location? She said the cousin had an auto shop. That's all I remember. She made me promise not to tell anyone because she was planning to run, and she didn't want Riker getting suspicious. Tyler grabbed Hank's arm. The auto shop in Millbrook. That has to be it. Riker's cousin owns it. Jade's voice turned sharp with alarm. Wait, are you saying you're going there? Tyler, no. You can't. If these people are as dangerous as Lena thought. What's the cousin's name? Hank interrupted. I don't. Wait. She mentioned it once. Something with A.D., Derek? No, Dalton. Wait, that's your name. Not Dalton, Jade corrected herself. Dwayne. Dwayne something. I never got a last name. Hank was already pulling up his phone, searching for auto shops in Millbrook. 3 results came up. The third one made his blood run cold, Dwayne's Auto Repair and Salvage. He showed Tyler the screen. The boy's face went white, then flushed with anger. That's it, Tyler whispered. That's where she is. Jade was still talking, begging them not to go, to call the police instead. But Hank barely heard her. He was staring at the address, calculating distance and risk. Thank you, Jade, he said, and ended the call. Tyler looked at him with fierce hope. We're going there, aren't we? Hank thought about the men following them. About a girl who'd been missing for 8 months. About a kid who refused to give up. Yeah, he said. We're going. But we're going smart. Dwayne's Auto Repair and Salvage sat at the end of a gravel road, surrounded by fields of rust and decay. Hank parked his truck a quarter mile away, hidden behind an abandoned barn, and approached on foot with Tyler. The place looked exactly like what it was, a front for something darker. Chain-link fencing topped with barbed wire enclosed stacks of crushed cars, engine parts scattered like metal bones. A garage building squatted in the center, its bay doors closed despite the late afternoon heat. Stay close, Hank whispered. And if I say run, you run. Don't look back. Tyler nodded, but Hank could see the boy's hands shaking. They moved along the fence line, looking for any sign of life. The office window was dark. No cars in the lot except for a rusted pickup truck and a black SUV that made Hank's stomach drop. It matched one of the vehicles that had followed them. They're here, Tyler breathed. Before Hank could respond, he spotted something that made him grab Tyler's shoulder. Through a gap in the fence, partially hidden behind a pile of tires, was a jacket. Not just any jacket, a women's denim jacket with embroidered flowers on the back. Tyler saw it at the same moment. His whole body went rigid. That's Lena's. I gave her that jacket for her birthday 2 years ago. I used my allowance money for 3 months to buy it. Hank's mind raced. The jacket could mean Lena had been here recently, or it could be bait. Either way, they needed to be smart. We need to get a better look inside that building, Hank said. They circled around to the back, where the fence had a section partially obscured by overgrown weeds. Hank tested it, loose enough to pull back. They squeezed through, moving low between the wrecked cars. The garage building had a small window on the side, grimy but transparent enough to see through. Hank peered inside while Tyler crouched beside him. The interior was mostly empty, a few tool benches, an old car lifted on a hydraulic jack. But there was something else. A door at the back, heavy and industrial, with a padlock that looked brand new. What's back there? Tyler whispered. Before Hank could answer, voices erupted from around the corner. Both of them dropped flat behind a rusted-out sedan. Two men emerged from the office. One was tall and wiry with a shaved head, the same man from the gas station. The other was stocky, wearing coveralls with "Dwayne's" stitched on the pocket. "Shouldn't have followed them so close," the stocky man was saying. His voice was rough, angry. "Now they know we're watching." Riker said to keep eyes on the kid, the bald man replied. Said if the brother showed up looking, we needed to know about it. Dwayne, because it had to be Dwayne, kicked at a tire. Well, now they're spooked. Could be anywhere. Could have called the cops. The kid won't call cops. Riker says he's been trying to convince people the sister's alive for months. Nobody believes him. What about the trucker? Just some guy the kid hitched with. Nobody special. We find them, we deal with the trucker, bring the kid to Riker. Simple. Tyler's breathing had gone shallow beside Hank. The boy's face was pale with rage and fear. Dwayne pulled out a phone. "I'm calling Riker. Tell him we lost them, but they're probably heading this direction. He needs to move the girl tonight. Move her." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Hank knew they had seconds to make a decision. If Riker moved Lena, they might never find her again. But if they revealed themselves now, they were outnumbered and outgunned. Tyler made the decision for them. The boy stood up suddenly, his voice ringing across the junkyard. "Where is she?" Both men spun around. Hank cursed and stood, putting himself between Tyler and the men. "Where's my sister?" Tyler shouted, all fear burned away by desperation. Dwayne's face went from shock to rage in an instant. "That's him. That's the brother." The bald man was already moving, reaching for something at his waistband, a weapon. "Run!" Hank grabbed Tyler's arm and yanked him backward. They sprinted through the maze of wrecked cars, feet pounding on gravel. Behind them, Dwayne was screaming into his phone while the bald man gave chase. Hank's truck was too far. They'd never make it. He changed direction, pulling Tyler toward the road where, thank God, a pickup truck was approaching, probably just some farmer heading home. Hank ran into the road, waving his arms frantically. The truck screeched to a halt. "Please!" Hank shouted. "We need help." The driver, an elderly man with weathered features, looked alarmed. Behind them, the bald man had stopped, realizing he couldn't chase them in front of a witness. "What in the—" "Call 911, Hank said urgently. "Tell them there's a kidnapping victim at Dwayne's auto shop. A girl named Lena Morrison. Tell them she's been held there for 8 months. The old man's eyes widened, but he grabbed his phone. Hank turned to see Dwayne and the bald man running back toward the garage building, toward that locked door. They were going to move Lena right now. Or worse. "We have to go back," Tyler said, pulling against Hank's grip. But Hank could hear sirens already. The old man must have gotten through to police. Multiple sirens, getting closer. The black SUV roared to life in the lot, tires spitting gravel as it raced away. Inside, Hank knew, was their only lead to wherever Riker was taking Lena next. Hank made a split-second decision that would haunt him for hours. He grabbed Tyler, sprinted back toward his truck, and fired up the engine just as the black SUV tore past them on the main road. "What are you doing?" the old farmer shouted after them. But Hank was already moving, his truck roaring to life. Tyler tumbled into the passenger seat, eyes wide. "They're going to Lena," Tyler said. "We can't lose them." "I know," Hank's jaw was set tight. The SUV had a head start, but it was heading away from town, away from the approaching sirens. That meant Riker had another location, somewhere remote. The SUV turned off the main highway onto a narrow mountain road that snaked upward into dense forest. Hank followed, keeping enough distance that they wouldn't be obvious but close enough not to lose them. "They know we're behind them," Tyler said, watching the SUV's brake lights flash. Probably. But they don't know if we're alone or if we've got cops following us. That'll make them think twice about stopping. Rain began to fall, light at first, then heavy sheets that turned the winding road slick. The truck's wipers could barely keep up. Hank's knuckles were white on the steering wheel as they climbed higher into the mountains. Suddenly, the SUV's brake lights went dark. It accelerated hard, taking a sharp curve at dangerous speed. "They're running," Hank said, and pushed the gas pedal down. What followed was the most terrifying 20 minutes of Tyler's young life. The road twisted like a snake, barely wide enough for two vehicles. On one side, the mountain rose steep and unforgiving. On the other, a cliff dropped away into darkness. The SUV tried to lose them, taking turns so sharp that Hank could hear the tires screaming. But Hank had 20 years of experience hauling loads through mountain passes. He knew how to read the road, how to anticipate curves, how to use his truck's weight as an advantage rather than a liability. "There." Tyler pointed. The SUV had tried to take a hairpin turn too fast. It fishtailed, rear end sliding toward the cliff edge before the driver corrected. But the mistake gave Hank the opening he needed. He surged forward, pulling alongside the SUV on a brief straight stretch. Through the rain-streaked windows, he could see the bald man in the driver's seat, phone pressed to his ear. "Making a call. Warning someone. They're telling Riker we're coming," Tyler said. The SUV swerved suddenly, trying to force Hank's truck toward the cliff edge. Metal screeched as the vehicles made contact. Hank jerked the wheel, keeping control, but the impact sent his side mirror spinning away into the darkness. "Hold on!" Hank shouted. The road narrowed further, and the SUV had to fall back. They continued the chase deeper into the mountains, the rain now so heavy that visibility dropped to almost nothing. Then Tyler started crying. Not loud, just quiet tears streaming down his face. "This is my fault," he whispered. "If I hadn't stood up back there, if I hadn't yelled." "Stop," Hank's voice was firm but not unkind. "You didn't cause this, Tyler. You hear me? None of this is your fault. But Lena, she ran away to protect me. From Riker. She told me once that he said he'd hurt me if she ever left him. She was trying to handle it on her own, and I couldn't help her. I was too small, too useless. Listen to me." Hank took one hand off the wheel long enough to grip Tyler's shoulder. "Your sister made choices to protect you because she loves you. That's what family does. But what Riker did, what he's doing, that's on him. Not you. Not her. Him." Tyler wiped his eyes with his sleeve. "What if we're too late?" "We're not," Hank said it with more confidence than he felt. "We can fix this. Together." Ahead, the SUV's brake lights flashed rapidly. Hank slowed, suspicious. Then he saw why. The road forked, and the SUV was taking the left path, a route that looked even more treacherous. But something made Hank hesitate. He'd seen this tactic before, years ago when he'd accidentally stumbled into a drug run. Lead the pursuer down the wrong path while someone else escapes in another direction. "Which way?" Tyler asked desperately. Hank made the call. "Right." "But they went left." "Exactly." Hank took the right fork, accelerating. "They want us to follow. That means we should go the opposite way." For 3 terrible minutes, Hank thought he'd made the wrong choice. The road seemed to lead nowhere, just deeper into empty forest. Tyler sat rigid, silent, probably thinking the same thing. Then they rounded a curve and saw it, a second vehicle, a gray sedan, the same one from the gas station. It was parked at the entrance to an overgrown driveway, engine running, waiting. When the sedan's driver saw Hank's truck, he panicked. The car lurched forward, racing up the driveway. Hank followed, his truck bouncing over potholes and roots. The driveway opened into a clearing where a rundown cabin sat dark and silent. The sedan skidded to a stop. The driver jumped out and ran inside, shouting something Hank couldn't hear. Tyler was already opening his door before the truck fully stopped. "Tyler, wait." But the boy was gone, running toward the cabin with 8 months of desperation fueling his legs. Hank grabbed a tire iron from behind his seat and followed, his heart hammering. They were about to find out if they'd been right all along. Tyler hit the cabin door first, throwing it open with a crash that echoed through the clearing. Hank was 3 steps behind, tire iron raised, expecting resistance. What they found instead was chaos. The bald driver was struggling with someone in the back room, a girl with dark, matted hair and torn clothing. She was fighting like a wild animal, all nails and fury. "Lena!" Tyler's scream cut through everything. The girl's head snapped up. Her face was gaunt, bruised, barely recognizable as the smiling teenager from the photograph. But her eyes locked onto Tyler with the kind of recognition that went beyond sight, straight to the soul. "Tyler?" Her voice was hoarse, disbelieving. The bald man made a mistake then. He loosened his grip for just a second, distracted by Tyler's entrance. Lena drove her elbow into his ribs, twisted free, and ran. Hank moved on pure instinct. As the man lunged after Lena, Hank swung the tire iron. It connected with the man's shoulder with a sickening crack. The man went down, howling. Lena stumbled straight into Tyler's arms. They collided, both of them sinking to their knees on the filthy cabin floor, holding each other like the world might tear them apart again if they let go. "I looked for you," Tyler sobbed. "I never stopped looking." "I know," Lena whispered, her hands shaking as she clutched her brother's jacket. "I knew you would. I knew." The bald man was getting up, reaching for something at his waistband. Hank didn't hesitate. He grabbed Tyler and Lena, hauling them both toward the door. "Move. Now." They burst outside into the rain just as headlights swept across the clearing. Hank's heart sank, more of them. But then he saw the markings on the vehicles. Police cruisers. 3 of them. The old farmer must have given them the location. Or the 911 call had been traced. Either way, salvation had arrived in the form of flashing blue lights. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands. Hank raised his hands, still holding the tire iron, ready to explain everything. But one of the officers, a woman with sharp eyes and gray streaking her dark hair, took one look at Lena and her expression changed from tactical alertness to horror. "Get medical here now," she shouted. "We need paramedics." The next hour blurred together. Paramedics arrived and wrapped Lena in blankets, checking her vitals while she refused to let go of Tyler's hand. The bald man was dragged out in handcuffs, still cursing. Police secured the cabin, documenting everything with cameras and evidence bags. Hank sat on the bumper of his truck, exhausted, while the female officer, Detective Chen, she'd introduced herself, questioned him. "So let me get this straight," she said, notepad in hand. "You drove a runaway minor across state lines to investigate a closed missing persons case based on an unverified sighting?" "That's about the size of it," Hank admitted. "That's felony kidnapping." "I know." Detective Chen studied him for a long moment. "The Morrison girl says you saved her life. Says her brother's the only reason she survived these 8 months, knowing he'd come for her. That true?" Hank glanced over at Tyler and Lena. They were sitting in the back of an ambulance, still clutching each other, paramedics working around them. Tyler was explaining something urgently to his sister, gesturing, while she nodded and stroked his hair like she used to when he was younger. "Kid wouldn't give up," Hank said quietly. Nobody believed him. "I figured someone should." Chen closed her notepad. "The girl's injuries are consistent with long-term captivity. She's severely dehydrated, malnourished, shows signs of repeated trauma. She tried to escape 4 times, has scars to prove it. Riker kept moving her between locations. This cabin was the latest. Where is he? Riker? Still in the wind. But the idiots he hired to watch her are all talking, trying to cut deals. We'll find him, she paused. The Morrison kids are twins, right? Yeah. Makes sense. There's something about twins, that connection. Maybe that's what kept her alive. Knowing her brother was out there, refusing to believe she was gone, Chen stood, stretching her back. You're still looking at charges, you know. Child endangerment at minimum. I know. But given the circumstances, and the fact that you probably saved that girl's life tonight, I'm going to recommend leniency. Don't make me regret it. Hank nodded. An officer approached Chen, holding an evidence bag with a phone inside. Detective, we found this in the cabin. Multiple messages to a contact labeled, our last message was sent 20 minutes ago. Says, they found the cabin. Get out now. Chen's jaw tightened. Put out an APB on Riker Vaughn. All available units. He knows we're coming. As she strode away, barking orders, Hank walked over to the ambulance. Tyler looked up at him with red-rimmed eyes. Hank, this is Lena, he said, like he'd been waiting his whole life to make this introduction. Lena looked at Hank with an expression that held exhaustion, gratitude, and something else, maybe hope. Thank you, she whispered. For believing him when no one else would. Hank didn't trust himself to speak. He just nodded. Sir? A paramedic touched his arm. You should get checked out too. That's a nasty cut on your head. Hank reached up, surprised to find blood. He hadn't even noticed. As the paramedic led him away, he looked back one more time at the twins. They were holding hands, foreheads pressed together, whispering words only they could hear. For the first time in 8 months, they were whole again. 3 weeks later, Hank stood in a hospital corridor, holding a cup of terrible coffee and wondering how his life had gotten so complicated. Lena had been transferred to a specialized recovery facility after the initial emergency treatment. The doctors said she'd need months of physical therapy and counseling, but she was strong. She'd survive. More than that, she'd heal. Riker Vaughn had been arrested trying to cross into Canada with fake identification and $50,000 in cash. The investigation revealed he'd been running an off-the-books operation with his cousin Dwayne, using the auto shop as a front for moving stolen vehicles and holding people against their will when debts needed collecting. Lena had been his prisoner, his possession. The charges were stacking up: kidnapping, assault, human trafficking. He'd spend the rest of his life in prison. Hank should have felt relief. Instead, he felt strangely empty. Mr. Dalton? He turned to see a woman in business attire approaching. She carried a folder and wore the kind of efficient expression that meant bureaucracy was about to happen. I'm Sarah Winters, with Child Protective Services, she said, extending her hand. We spoke on the phone. Hank shook it, wary. About Tyler. Yes. As you know, his foster placement has been problematic. Mr. and Mrs. Patterson have decided they can no longer care for him. They say the situation has become too high-profile, too stressful. Translation: they didn't want the attention or responsibility. Hank's jaw tightened. Tyler will need a new placement, Ms. Winters continued. Normally, we'd move him to another foster home in the system. But given the unique circumstances, she opened her folder, pulling out several documents. Lena Morrison will turn 18 in 4 months. Once she's legally an adult and cleared by psychiatric evaluation, she can petition for guardianship of her brother. 4 months, Hank repeated. What happens to Tyler until then? That's what I wanted to discuss with you. Ms. Winters met his eyes. Tyler has been very clear about where he wants to stay. And Lena, despite everything she's been through, has been equally vocal about what she thinks is best for her brother. Hank felt something tighten in his chest. What are you asking me? We did a background check. You're clean. Never married, no children, steady employment for 20 years. References from your employer describe you as reliable and trustworthy. She paused. Both Tyler and Lena have requested that you be considered as Tyler's temporary guardian until Lena is legally able to take custody. The words hung in the air. Hank stared at her, sure he'd misheard. Me? You saved his sister's life, Mr. Dalton. You believed him when no one else would. You put yourself at considerable risk, legal and physical, to help him. In Tyler's eyes, and honestly in the state's estimation, that makes you the most stable, trustworthy person in his life right now. Hank's mind raced. A kid. A responsibility. Someone depending on him every single day. It was everything he'd spent 2 decades avoiding. I'm a truck driver, he said. I'm gone for days at a time. That's no life for a kid. Actually, we've been in contact with your employer. They're willing to adjust your routes, shorter hauls, regional runs that have you home most nights. They're quite impressed with what you did, by the way. They've received a lot of positive attention. Hank barely heard her. His thoughts had spiraled to a memory of his own sister, Sarah, lost to the system because no one had stepped up. Because he'd been too young, too powerless to keep them together. I don't know how to be a parent, he said quietly. Ms. Winters smiled, and for the first time, it looked genuine. Mr. Dalton, you drove across 3 states with armed criminals chasing you to save a child's sister. You already know the most important part, you show up. The rest, you figure out as you go. Before Hank could respond, Tyler appeared at the end of the hallway. He stopped when he saw them talking, his expression uncertain, hopeful, terrified. Hank looked at the boy, this scrawny kid with duct-taped shoes who'd approached him at a rest stop with $20 and impossible hope. Tyler had trusted him when he had no reason to. Had believed his sister was alive when everyone said she was dead. Had been right. Mr. Dalton? Ms. Winters prompted. Hank thought about his empty apartment. His solitary routes. 20 years of deliberately keeping his distance from anything that mattered because losing people hurt too much. Then he thought about Tyler's face when he'd found Lena. About the twins holding each other in the rain. About being the person who'd made that reunion possible. Maybe some things were worth the risk of losing. Yeah, Hank said, his voice rough. Okay. I'll do it. Tyler's face transformed. He ran down the corridor and crashed into Hank, hugging him hard enough to knock the breath from his lungs. Thank you, Tyler whispered fiercely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Hank awkwardly patted the boy's back, meeting Ms. Winters' approving gaze over Tyler's head. 4 months later, Hank pulled his truck, a newer model with an extended cab, into a hospital parking lot. Tyler sat beside him, nervous energy practically vibrating off him. She's really coming home? Tyler asked for the 5th time. That's what they said. Lena emerged through the hospital doors 20 minutes later, walking slowly but steadily. Her hair was clean and shining, pulled back in a ponytail. She'd gained weight, and though she still moved carefully, like someone relearning trust, her eyes were clear. Tyler was out of the truck before Hank could put it in park, running to his sister. They met in the middle, hugging with the ease of people who'd survived the impossible together. Hank climbed down, hanging back, giving them their moment. Lena looked over Tyler's shoulder at him. Ready to have 2 of us around? She asked. The social workers had worked it out. Lena would live with them while completing her GED and starting community college classes. Eventually, she'd take over as Tyler's legal guardian. But for now, they'd be a household of 3. A family, cobbled together from broken pieces, but family nonetheless. Truck's got room, Hank said simply. As they drove away from the hospital, Tyler chattering excitedly between them, Lena quietly reaching over to squeeze Hank's shoulder in gratitude. Hank realized something had changed. The road ahead didn't look empty anymore. For the first time in 20 years, he wasn't driving alone. He was driving home. The end.